When it comes to winter survival among Native Americans, clothing was always one of the most important secrets. It's no coincidence that many archaeologists and modern survival experts are amazed by the system their ancestors developed. They didn't just endure the cold, they turned clothing into a form of survival technology, allowing them to move freely, hunt effectively, and stay healthy in conditions that could drop to -40 degrees Fahrenheit. The secret lay in buckskin, deer hide tanned with animal brains, known as brain-tan buckskin. At first glance, using animal brains to tan hides might seem strange, even repulsive to modern people. But for Native Americans, it was an ingenious technique. Brains contain special enzymes and fats that, when absorbed into the hide, break down its stiff fibers, creating a material that was soft, supple, and breathable. Unlike stiff, heavy leathers that made wearers move like robots, brain-tan buckskin draped gently and comfortably, almost like fine cloth. Many experts today call it the ancient version of high-performance athletic wear, since it repelled water while allowing the skin to breathe, keeping sweat from becoming a deadly hazard in freezing weather. Even more impressive was how Native Americans built a multi-layered clothing system, similar to the layering principle that modern outdoor brands now market at high prices. The innermost layer was usually soft hide, carefully treated to wick away sweat and keep the body dry. This detail was crucial, since moisture in freezing temperatures quickly leads to hypothermia. The middle layer varied depending on the region and tribal creativity. Some used shredded bark fibers as natural insulation, while others wore animal furs with the hair turned inward for warmth. The outer layer was made of thick, specially treated hides, tough enough to block icy winds and snow. This perfect combination allowed them to stay warm without synthetic fibers or industrial waterproofing. Another fascinating detail was the fringe. While many people today see fringes as purely decorative, for Native Americans they also served survival purposes. Fringes helped break up wind currents and shed rain efficiently. This was a clear example of beauty and function being inseparable. Clothing was not just stylish, but directly supported survival. Layering wasn't just about warmth, but also about adaptability. Hunters could add or remove layers depending on activity levels. One Plains elder once told a European settler, "If you can still feel your legs, you haven't put on enough leggings." The remark was humorous, but it revealed a practical truth. Safety came only when the cold no longer penetrated. Mobility was another key factor. Unlike modern winter clothes that can crinkle or restrict movement, buckskin garments were soft and silent. This was critical for hunting, where even the slightest noise could scare off prey. Thus, clothing not only kept them warm but also directly contributed to feeding the community. However, clothing wasn't simply finished once it was made. Native Americans knew that maintenance was essential. They regularly reapplied waterproofing made from animal fats or other natural mixtures. This could be considered an early version of today's durable water-repellent coatings, except they didn't need printed care labels. Generational knowledge taught them exactly how to keep their garments strong throughout long winters. Their view of clothing also carried philosophical meaning. For Native Americans, dressing for winter wasn't only about avoiding discomfort. It was an act of respect for nature and their own skills. Each garment represented countless hours of labor, hunting the animal, tanning the hide, sewing the pieces together. There was no place for waste or fast fashion. Every detail had a purpose. Even the small pouches or pockets sewn into garments were practical, holding tools, bits of food, or essential items. Nothing was purely ornamental. What impressed researchers most was the real-world effectiveness. Archaeologists have confirmed that some tribal winter clothing could keep people warm at -40 degrees Fahrenheit, the exact point where Fahrenheit and Celsius meet. And all of this was achieved without synthetic fibers, heated batteries, or modern technology. It was living proof of the wisdom and resourcefulness of native peoples, who listened to nature, learned from it, and turned its gifts into survival tools. In conclusion, the Native American winter clothing system was far more than a layer of protection. It was the product of knowledge, labor, creativity, and a philosophy of harmony with nature. From brain-tan buckskin to multi-layered designs, from functional fringes to careful maintenance, their garments formed a survival technology far ahead of its time. Compared to today's expensive gear, their wisdom shows us that sometimes ancient knowledge still holds the most valuable lessons. If clothing was the shield against winter, housing was the fortress. Archaeologists still marvel at how Native Americans built warm, durable homes long before modern insulation or electricity. Some winter houses maintained temperatures above 60 degrees Fahrenheit even when it was minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit outside. On the Great Plains, tribes built earth lodges. Half sunken into the ground, they used the natural insulation of the earth itself. Walls were several feet thick, reinforced with massive wooden beams, and covered with soil and sod for added protection. These lodges were large enough to house multiple families, functioning like communal fortresses against the cold. In the Northeast, tribes constructed longhouses. These massive wooden halls, often hundreds of feet long, could fit many families. Fires burned along the center, and smoke escaped through roof openings. As the smoke rose, it warmed the air, creating a natural heating system. One longhouse was recorded at 400 feet, longer than a football field, kept warm by just a handful of fires. In the Great Basin, tribes used wikiups, dome-shaped shelters woven from branches and covered with thick grass or bark. The countless air pockets trapped in the materials acted like natural insulation, similar to fiberglass today. Entrances were often angled away from prevailing winds, a subtle yet brilliant design. Archaeologists have found homes with layered soils in their walls, each type chosen for its thermal properties. This was material science long before the discipline existed. Some houses even formed clusters, reducing wind chill by up to 30% through collective placement, an early form of urban planning. But these houses were more than warm shelters, they were cultural hubs. Winter was storytelling season, when families gathered to share legends, teach children, and strengthen bonds. One recorded longhouse hosted over 100 people through an entire winter. The genius lay in building with nature, not against it. Instead of relying on artificial heat, they harnessed earth, wood, and air to create comfortable environments. Today, eco-architects study these designs for sustainable housing solutions. In essence, Native American winter homes combine practicality, community, and environmental wisdom, proof that ancient architecture could be both functional and deeply human. If homes were the fortress, then fire was the beating heart. For Native Americans, fire meant warmth, food, light, and life itself. Mastery of fire separated survival from disaster. The bow drill was their go-to tool for ignition. While rubbing sticks together sounds like a cartoon cliché, skilled hands could produce an ember in under 30 seconds. The secret was selecting the right woods. Cedar, yucca, or cottonwood worked best. Knowledge of wood types was as crucial as the technique itself. Even more impressive was their ability to preserve fire. Instead of starting fresh every day, tribes carried glowing embers wrapped in birch bark, smoldering for days or even weeks. Some elders claimed embers could be kept alive for 2 weeks on migrations. In a way, this was the world's first portable battery, except it powered survival. They also built special fire pits lined with heat-retaining stones like soapstone. These pits could keep a lodge at 70 degrees Fahrenheit while the outside world froze. Firewood choices were strategic. Softwoods like pine gave quick bursts of heat, while hardwoods like oak and hickory burned longer through the night. Modern tests show this combination was up to 40% more efficient than random burning. Wet weather wasn't a problem either. Birch bark's natural oils let it burn even when damp. Fireboards with carved notches kept tinder dry in downpours. Some of these designs are still taught in survival schools today. Managing smoke was equally important. Underground air channels and clever draft systems minimized smoke while feeding oxygen to the flames, an early form of chimney science. But fire was more than practical. Around the flames, communities gathered to tell stories, teach lessons, arrange marriages, and make decisions. Some tribes even kept a single fire burning for over 100 days straight, the entire length of winter. For Native Americans, fire was more than a tool. It was a living presence. It cooked, healed, united, and inspired. Without fire, survival was impossible. With it, life flourished. Surviving the cold meant nothing without food. With snow covering the land, hunting and gathering became difficult. Native Americans solved this through brilliant preservation methods, ensuring steady supplies through the harshest months. Their ultimate survival food was pemmican. Lean meat was dried, pounded into powder, then mixed with melted fat and berries. The result was nutrient-dense, high in protein and fat, and astonishingly long-lasting. Some pemmican could remain edible for decades. Just a few pounds could keep someone alive for weeks. Acorns became another staple. Normally bitter with tannins, they were soaked in running water to leach out the bitterness, then dried and ground into flour. One mature oak tree could yield 2,000 pounds of acorns, enough to feed families for months. Northern tribes harvested wild rice, sometimes 300 pounds per family each year. Stored in birch bark containers, it stayed dry and pest-free. Tests show these containers outperformed modern plastics in some respects. Storage pits dug below the frost line acted as natural refrigerators, keeping food at 32 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit year-round. Meat, grains, and nuts could be preserved safely for months. Some pits uncovered by archaeologists still held edible food centuries later. Even during hardship, creativity thrived. Some tribes made a primitive ice cream by mixing whipped moose fat with berries and snow. It wasn't Baskin-Robbins, but it was a sweet treat during bleak winters. Nutrition was carefully balanced. Hunters consumed up to 5,000 calories per day, fueled by fatty diets ideal for cold survival. Food storage also became an art. Massive woven baskets not only held hundreds of pounds but also told stories through patterns symbolizing harvests and survival. In short, Native Americans didn't just endure winter food shortages. They planned, preserved, and thrived. Their methods reveal a deep understanding of nutrition, storage, and sustainability that remains relevant today. Deep snow made travel nearly impossible, unless you were Native American. They transformed snow from obstacle to pathway through ingenious inventions like snowshoes, dog sleds, and winter trails. Snowshoes were revolutionary. By spreading body weight across wide wooden frames laced with rawhide, they reduced ground pressure by 85%. A 200-pound person could weigh just 30 pounds on snow. This turned exhausting trudging into smooth strides. Tribes designed shoes for local conditions. The Ojibwe made long, narrow ones for speed, traveling up to 70 miles a day. The Cree built wide beer-paw shoes for maneuvering in forests. The Algonquin crafted balanced designs similar to today's modern snowshoes. To protect them from moisture, rawhide webbing was coated in animal fat, making them water-resistant for up to 3 months. Beyond walking, dog sleds carried people and cargo with astonishing efficiency. Teams of dogs pulled up to 1,500 pounds and traveled 100 miles daily. One record-breaking journey covered 1,000 miles in just 9 days. Sleds were masterpieces of flexible wood, able to bend and absorb shock. Runners were coated with ice to reduce friction, making them 30% more efficient than early snowmobiles. Equally impressive was their trail system. Marked with bent trees or rock cairns, these routes guided travelers even through blizzards. Many modern winter highways follow the same paths, a testament to their practicality. Travel was never solitary. Groups worked together, taking turns breaking trail, tending dogs, and repairing sleds. Cooperation turned perilous journeys into communal achievements. For Native Americans, winter wasn't a prison but an open road. Their snowshoes, sleds, and trails proved that with creativity, even the harshest landscapes could become highways of survival and connection. Perhaps the greatest survival secret wasn't clothing, housing, fire, or food, but community. For Native Americans, winter survival was never a solo mission. It was a collective effort where every member, from children to elders, played a role. Some families were designated firekeepers, responsible for keeping flames alive 24/7. Hunters risked their lives tracking game in storms, often working in silent teams, reading subtle signs like melted snow prints. Storytellers entertained during long nights, but their tales also carried survival lessons and cultural wisdom. Healers prepared medicines from bark and roots to treat fevers and coughs, knowledge so valuable that even European settlers sought their help. Children weren't idle either. They collected kindling, learned to mend clothing, and memorized the stories that they would one day pass on. Even games and competitions held indoors during blizzards helped keep spirits high and bodies active. The underlying belief was simple. If one person failed, the whole community suffered. This interdependence created bonds so strong that modern psychologists still study them as models of true cooperation. In essence, the greatest warmth during winter wasn't just from fires or hides. It came from the people gathered together, united in purpose. Survival for Native Americans was never about going it alone, but about living and thriving as one.